Okay, so I started the record button just so we all know. We'll go ahead and start policy committee at 6 o'clock. They're going to read through 5740, see if anything pops out at anybody. It would be nice to know that nothing pops out and we're good to go on that one.
Be done. Is it 8 weeks in? Just saying.
Reduction in force, policy 5740. Financial emergency must be declared by the board prior to taking any reduction in force actions. Financial emergency declared shall be effective for only one fiscal year and shall not be declared by the board for a second consecutive year unless qualified by additional reductions. It is recognized, I don't think it's fiscal year though. I think is it fiscal or is it academic?
It's fiscal.
Okay. That wouldn't align with the budget though. It is recognized because the budget's
fiscal.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, July 1st to June 30th.
I wish everything were either one or the other.
That would be nice. Yeah.
It is recognized that the board has the responsibility to maintain a good public elementary and secondary schools and to implement the educational interests of the state, consistent with the state and federal education requirements, including district improvement plans, accreditation requirements, and other school-based issues. However, recognizing that it may become necessary to eliminate certificated staff positions in certain circumstances, this policy is adopted to provide a fair and orderly process should such elimination become necessary. The board has the sole and exclusive authority to determine the appropriate number of certificated employees and to eliminate certified staff positions consistent with the provisions of the state law. A reduction of certified employees may occur as a result of, but not limited to, other conditions necessitating reductions. The following examples are curriculum or program changes, negative changes in the financial conditions of the districts, decreases in student enrollment, including overall, by program, by grade, or by school, or staffing limitations of the district. The need for implementation of a RIF or the elimination of certificated positions is left to the sole discretion of the board. The decision made shall be based on information provided through the use of policy 5740F. The board may choose to implement a RIF through the following: the elimination of an entire program or portions of programs, the elimination of a position in a certain grade level only, the elimination of a position by category, the elimination of a position in an overall review of the district. The district may adopt a policy, that's it, establishing an equitable method of recalling individuals subject to a RIF if positions become available subsequent to the RIF. That was what it was. Did you work on that at all? I'm just curious.
Say that again, what?
This policy to bring people back.
No, I thought we were going to put it in our procedure. We were just going to encompass all of it. We weren't going to do a separate doc.
Okay.
Because some of the language we put in there has it, and so we were just going to clean it up, I thought. But I can do a separate one.
No, I thought we had talked about that, and because it's highlighted because we don't have a policy and we're stating a policy. So if we're not going to create a policy, then we should either...
You tell me what you want me to do.
I thought the direction was to create a policy to support that.
I will do that. I did not pick that up, so.
That's okay. Procedures. Alright, reduction in force procedures. Did anybody have any comments or suggestions on our policy that we keep looking at? Okay. Procedures. Reduction in force procedures. The decision to institute a RIF and the selection of an employee or employees subject to such reduction shall be at the sole discretion of the board, except for the following limitations. The decision as to which employee or employees shall be subject to such reduction shall not be made solely on consideration of employee seniority or contract status. Prior to commencing action to terminate certified employee contracts under these procedures, the board will give due consideration to its ability to effectuate position elimination and or reduction in staff by voluntary retirements, voluntary resignations, transfer of existing staff members to another position for which the individual is appropriately qualified, and voluntary leaves of absence. Provided that, however, no transfer shall result in the termination of another employee. Procedures. Upon its declaration of a financial emergency, the board shall reopen the salary and benefits compensation aspect of the negotiated agreement to include the length of the certified or certificated employee contracts along with the amount of compensation and benefits. The board and the Lakeland Education Association, or LEA, shall meet and confer in good faith for the purpose of reaching an agreement. If the parties to the negotiated agreement mutually agree, other matters contained within the negotiated agreement directly affecting the financial circumstances in the district may be discussed and negotiated. Prior to commencing action to terminate certificated employee contracts under these procedures, the district administration will determine what buildings, grade levels, and or subject matters certificated employees' names subject.
You skipped one?
I did. Okay, there we are. So need to be reduced pursuant to this policy. The district administration will make a list of the certificated employees' names, subjects, grade levels, and buildings. In the event a RIF is required, certificated employees who are retained pursuant to this policy may be reassigned if suitable position openings are available in instructional areas for which they are endorsed and for which the principal has approved the transfer pursuant to Idaho Code requirements. In making a determination as to the individuals to be released pursuant to the RIF, consideration will be given to the following criteria. Each criterion below shall be considered in terms of the total context when selecting those employees who are to be considered for reduction. The following criterion will be considered.
Jesus is getting ready to speak because it's all in red, like the New Testament.
Can I just ask real quick, like, where it says, can we just go over again why it says, provided that, however, no transfer shall result in the termination of another employee? I guess I'm just trying to figure out, so if they were to cut U.S. history and I'm qualified to teach health, you're saying that I would lose my job because I would take the health teacher's position even though I have more experience and I'm certified to teach health? Like, I would be higher, like I would rank higher. So that's where I'm not understanding this. Like,
and I think it depends on.
Provided that, however, no transfer shall result in the termination of another employee. Or, for example, another example would be if we have someone who has been in the district and they take a principal position or a vice principal position and we terminate that position and we move them back into whatever they used to teach because we've kind of made that agreement with them, and then that would push somebody else out of that position. This is saying that you can't do that. But isn't that kind of the RIF policy? Because you would terminate someone to move somebody else to.
Well, if they're in, I think, at least my understanding, is that we go through the selection process and then the group of people that are to be RIFed, where say there is a health teacher that's RIFed, if we need that position filled and you're credentialed, you would move into that position because that person had to go away.
But if that person wasn't initially being RIFed, they had a job and she lost her position because that position disappeared.
Right.
We're saying that because she's been here 20 plus years, has all of the experience, follows all of the stuff, she's got high marks and whatnot.
And
she could not
certified
take
to
over
teach
for
that.
the health position because that wasn't a position that was being RIFed at the time. So we're looking at.
I think.
So I think this is wrong terminology.
I think that actually comes from the statute, but I think where maybe we're getting hung up. So there are different ways that you can RIF, and it can be just a program, so then you just have a small portion of your teacher population being ranked. And if you're in that, and you're not terminated, but we're not having that program anymore, and you have additional endorsements, we can't just slide you into a class that you want to teach based on your endorsement because somebody else is there. But we could there would be an open position somewhere else that we would be able to put you in because the number of people we RIF has to allow us to keep the number of staff we're trying to keep. I think what this is saying is once we've done the RIF, and we have, elementary is the better example than secondary, because secondary is so dependent on endorsements, but for elementary, if we were riffing at the elementary level and we had, let's say 15 positions that we had to riff, we go through that process, and now we have a whole bunch of openings maybe in one building, because that's where the majority of people who got cut were. Other people now are gonna have to slide over, but maybe you don't want to teach first grade, you want to teach fourth grade, but there's no fourth grade opening. You don't get to bump the fourth grade person out.
No, and I, like, it's way easier at the elementary. I'm just concerned because of if the state eliminates certain requirements, this could cause some of our veteran teachers to potentially have to go use their endorsement somewhere else. So if that program is cut, or if we decided as a district that we're going to cut a program, those teachers that, I mean, we have teachers that have been teaching in the district for, 30 years that could go into another subject, and this is saying, no, they couldn't. They'd just get fired. They would just be riffed. Like that, that's the way I'm reading this.
That's
not in
that
here.
line is not in statute.
I'm not trying to get hung up on
No, no,
this,
no.
but I'm just saying if we're looking at, like,
No,
Can
you're
you
bringing
read
at the
it back-
elementary,
you're
this
bringing
is
it back.
great,
What
but
paragraph is it?
It's this
It's right there,
last
provided.
statement.
It's that
last statement.
Provided that no transfer shall result in the termination of another employee. So the decision as to which employee or employees shall be subject to a reduction shall not be made solely on consideration of employee seniority and contract status.
but if you have a master teacher,
So that would be part of the within the point system, I would think.
so
like,
then can't we just get rid of that then? Then why
This
do we
last
have
one?
this in there at all?
I-
Because elementary is easy. Like, you're not gonna get,
The endorsements
it's
don't
gonna
have-
naturally,
But
but
the-
at
but
the
the-
secondary with
Within-
endorsement.
But the point system, like what she's saying, if the district decided to eliminate history and social studies,
Right.
but health is staying, then it has nothing to do with the point system, because now she's just gonna pool to be riffed, where you could have a fourth year teacher in health, but she also has a health endorsement.
So may I make
We
a
talked
suggestion?
But
Absolutely.
that health teacher wouldn't be in the pool to
To
be
be riffed.
scored at all.
I
Right.
think this would be a good time if we opened up Amy White's email, because she does talk specifically about certain scenarios, and she does talk about it would be easier when you're doing a RIF to eliminate a program versus opening up the whole thing. But if you could just peruse down.
So Amy White states, which she is an attorney down in Boise, that works with
Specializes
school
in
districts.
education.
Yeah, with school districts. I really wanted to give some thought to your question, the statute. Okay. Oh, I don't know what your question was.
The question was basically, could we start, and she'll explain it further in there, that if we started, let's say with the category twos, and we had 4 basics in our category 2s, and that's all we needed to riff,
Mhm.
can we just be done with and we're done and
Okay.
call it a day? The answer is no, we
Okay.
cannot do that, so.
So I do agree that the decision as to which employees are subject to reduction shall not be made solely in consideration of the employee seniority or contract status. There have been no cases which interpret the meaning of this language, and the word solely does not mean solely.
Does mean so.
Oh, the word solely does mean solely.
Yeah.
Oh, goody. I do want to go to your example and play devil's advocate. With no prior case law to interpret, we are somewhat left to analyze probabilities and potential arguments. As we discussed during our call and as detailed in your email, the hypothetical reduction starts with Category 2 personnel who have a decided number, a certain number of basic marks on the evaluation in order to determine if that gets you to your RIF number. If not, you then move on to your Category 3 teachers and so on. Now, in playing devil's advocate, let's say we have category 4-2 teachers that have 3 basic marks, and you are going to reduce 4 teachers. You pick those 4 teachers and you do your reduction and call it a day. However, let's also hypothetically assume there are 2 category 3 teachers that have 4 basic marks and a 2 of renewable status that have 4 basic marks as well. Okay, I'm already lost. It would be very difficult to defend and assert the district did not make this decision solely based on category status or seniority when the district only looked at category 2 teachers for performance indicators. And there were category 3 and renewable teachers who had worse performance marks who were never looked at or considered.
Yeah, that's why we said when we included everybody else in there with the category 2. So
Right.
if you just say category 2s, you can't do that because that's solely.
But
Right.
if you put them all together and you have 2, 3s and renewable contracts who have more basics than your 2s, and we just riff the 2s, she's saying you can't do that because
Because
you're doing it based solely on the category
Yes.
2 and
Oh, I
not
see.
on the overall
And
performance.
And
But-
so when we go through this, I would like to look at Coeur form because again, it goes back to where they're honoring it's just like a natural point system that of course your renewable contracts, they're gonna get points for how many years they've been in the district, they're gonna get points for their leadership roles. I mean, there's all sorts of
That's
things
what
where
we have that in our form
your
too.
category, I
It's
know
just
your
simplified.
category 2s and your category 3s aren't gonna have that experience or as many points, but if we could continue.
I think it would
This is
be,
what we discussed last week.
I think it would be very difficult to argue that the decision was not solely made on their contract status. Did I read that paragraph? I think I did. No. Likewise, starting only looking by contract status as the first consideration makes it difficult to defend and present that argument. With that said, I do understand that the sole indicator arguable could be asserted as not the sole deciding factor, as performance indicators were also considered. However, if there are others on a different contract status with worse marks, I do not think you prevail in the argument. Now, if those 4 have the worst marks, it is easy and no one can argue otherwise. I also will return to the intention of the reduction in force statute. It was for the district to keep the best performing teachers regardless of their contract status. Your reduction in force policy and protocol is very similar to that all over the state, if not identical to many other schools. This has been implemented with fidelity by other districts who have had to reduce. I do not disagree that this is a very unpleasant and undesirable process, but it has been done successfully when comparing the performance of all employees regardless of their contract status. From a defense perspective, it is also problematic that you have had this policy and protocol in place for numerous years and would potentially be redoing and reconsidering the application of the protocol immediately prior to having to implement. Such always looks suspicious, as if you are trying to come to a specific outcome. Accusations of lack of transparency and ulterior motives, or something that would have to be overcome, and you don't need that at a time that is already going to be extremely difficult.
So what does that mean?
That means that by us looking at it right now, given our financial situation.
Yeah, it's not
it
gonna
can-
look good.
No, which, we got here based on the
Yeah.
input from attorneys. As discussed in our earlier call, the reduction process only applies to teachers who are returned or are recommended to be returned to the district for their next subsequent year based upon satisfactory performance who desire to return. I always strongly suggest to every district facing the situation that you find out as early as possible the number of teachers who do not plan on returning. Start asking now about retirements and resignations and get them on paper and approved as soon as possible. Oftentimes when there is upheaval, people start to look for other positions early because they want stability. If those situations do occur, I would recommend in the strongest terms possible that the district accept such resignations and be appreciative that there is one less person they have to reduce. Additionally, if there are employees whose performance is not satisfactory, that needs to be addressed in the traditional manner, even if it involves probationary period and traditional non-renewals. I do not know how deep your cut will have to go, but understanding we are talking $9.5 million with approximately 87% of your budget being staffing, I would imagine this is a significant number. I don't know if you have attempted to do a dry run based off of what data and information you already have, but it would be a worthwhile exercise. Last, it is always easiest to take out programs. Individuals who only hold that credential endorsement are much easier cut decisions that subjective performance marks.
But that says only hold that credential or
Right.
endorsement, so that doesn't.
It doesn't address what you're
Address
talking
what I was
about.
talking
So
about.
in doing such, I do also recognize that this approach always hits secondary a lot harder than elementary, as elective programs are often on the chopping block, and other than specials at elementary school, most of this is at secondary. I don't know if your team has spent the time to talk with any district admin that has had to do this in the past year or so, but that would also be worthwhile. Please let me know if you have any other questions.
Lisa, when you meet with the superintendents, is there anyone that you meet with that has to have went through work?
Coeur d'Alene.
So that's Erica Cordley.
They
did.
actually, they ranked their people, they didn't end up having to use it because their levy passed, but the tool that they used when they did it was a lot more cumbersome than they thought it was going to be and didn't always lead to the right decision. And so, they rewrote theirs, so Brooke has linked that in so that we can look at it. It's much simpler than
But if we could
ours.
look at that reform, I think that might help through some of this language here too, from Coeur d'Alene. And
Okay.
so up at the top. And I mean, they Eric told me about all of the aches and pains that they went through when they did this whole thing on their whole policy. And like you guys, they had to find a way to honor their veteran staff. And so the first section, if you scroll down just a little, is the evaluation, of course, distinguished, proficient, basic.
But where we struggle with that is that we don't really rank at distinguished, so.
But
But you
so
do
what
it.
each component you do, so what we could decide as a group is that it's the total number of points earned in the domain instead of the overall score of the domain if you wanted, and that gives us a greater variance. But
So is this supposed to be that these are the marks that could be chosen for each of these domains?
Correct.
Okay.
But we only allow for distinguished in one of two of those, domain 2 and 3. We
Okay.
do not allow for distinguished in 1 or 4. You can get a distinguished in there, but you can't be ranked as distinguished overall in those.
Okay.
So there's sections.
So ours would have to look
section.
different.
Our average, so basically at the end.
I don't like it, but I get it.
We don't like it either. The IPLP is, yeah, anyway, at the bottom though, you can be ranked as an overall, distinguished with an average of the 4 different domains. So
Okay.
that's how we get to that for the advanced professional endorsements and whatnot, so, yeah, it's fun.
Okay.
So then the next one is your experience, and they focused on the actual experience within the district, within Coeur d'Alene. And so, and there's quite a few points there, so I would want to focus on experience, of course, within Lakeland.
Why didn't they just do whole numbers? Why did they tabs?
Points?
Yeah, I would prefer to do whole
Yeah.
numbers as well.
Oh, it's a half
Yeah.
a
To
point.
do
Okay, I
more
thought it was
math.
5 points. I'm like,
Don't you like
why?
that is 5 points, but then the.
No, it's point
No, it's
five.
0.5.
Oh,
Point
Point
five,
five one,
one.
1.5
and
2.
Two.
Yep.
And then
Wow.
2 and 2 and 1 for each endorsement.
And then on that one, when we were looking at endorsements, because I did take that from theirs, we did do, and they used to, and maybe that's why they got rid of it, put a cap on the number of points you can get per endorsement, because again,
Okay.
you're looking at perhaps, I mean, I don't know what that looks like at the elementary level, but, 6 through 12,
Right.
I think on ours, we capped it at 4 points total, 2 points per endorsement, so, because you could have, like, I have 3 or 4 endorsements, so.
Okay.
And our high school people will have more endorsements than
And
our middle school
elementary.
because a lot of the middle school teachers are actually K-8 teachers, so
Right.
they don't typically have a lot of endorsements.
But, and then that's, I mean, I don't wanna jump ahead, but then you have to look at, which pool are you putting our elementary teachers in?
Right.
Mhm.
So in professional contributions, they did use like the APE leadership step. That was kind of like what we were recommending on there.
So you're giving credit to pass.
So that's what we had.
3 years, okay.
I mean, I thought that was in ours.
Yeah, we
also.
did.
Yeah, we did 8.
During 3 of the previous 5 years.
And then
APE was on a
there's
different
just-
one though, APE was over
No,
here
oh,
for there.
we have a whole, like, we
So
have
this
the
was for
advanced.
professional contributions, so.
Okay, so, and then they have professional standards and conduct.
And this is really kind of a cumbersome process on the HR side because we actually have to go into each and every personnel file and sift through this stuff.
And to be clear, if somebody did have a documented verbal slow down.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm in my own world. Where, do you need to scroll up or down or
No,
where do you
right
want
there.
me? Okay.
Yeah, so if somebody had a documented verbal coaching or warning in the last 2 years, they would be aware of that. Or if there was a formal written disciplinary action, they would also be aware of that. There's nothing that gets snuck into that folder.
No, you cannot do that. That's
Okay,
illegal.
no, I'm just double
So,
checking
yeah.
because I know in my
Yeah.
first 5 years, I requested to see my file because I was concerned that something was in there.
If
I mean,
it's
there wasn't, but-
documented, wouldn't it be a written coaching warning then still? I mean, how,
It should be.
What's the difference? I mean, how do you say documented verbal?
Well, if you're you sit down and I have a conversation with you and coach you about something.
So you're basically just saying,
And
hey, I
then-
noticed these things, you
and
need to
then-
get fixed, and then
yeah.
you go back and document, had a conversation.
Yeah, on this date, I had a conversation with Jason, we talked about these things.
Okay.
But Jason would know that that had been documented?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, he would get a copy of it.
Alright.
Everything should have signatures on it,
Think
but
so.
I don't know that that occurs. Okay, so where did our form go?
It's in there. You go back.
Oh, here you go. Okay, so we have domain 1, proficient, basic, unsatisfactory. Proficient, basic, unsatisfactory. So we didn't have
Distinguished.
Distinguished.
For
Okay.
2 and 3, we probably should because you.
Well,
can-
we did something different. I mean, Lynn did something different at the bottom.
Right.
She added the higher weighted category. So for domain, I'm guessing, I think when we had that conversation.
Well, we talked about, this was initially when we had sports in it, that somebody could have had basics, but if they had sports and it was
Right.
a K-8 person that, coached at the high school, but then an elementary person didn't, they could have more points, and we felt like when Delaney was here, the conversation was around, isn't this the most important, like how are you with kids in the classroom, so we wanted it to be weighted higher. This is the only category weighted higher.
So the weighted
Well-
higher category would be 2 or 3, correct?
No, well, I
No, just the entire
whatever your
category,
total
yeah.
number is, it's times 12. Or times
Oh,
10
okay.
or whatever.
I got you.
Yeah.
Oh, that whole, I'm sorry.
Or times
Well,
3, I
yes,
think I
yes,
put it.
yeah.
I got it, sorry.
So the
Yeah.
employee score
Yes.
divided by 12 multiplied times 3.
Yes.
Okay.
But our teachers can earn an overall score of distinguished in domain 2 and 3, so I do think we need to give that
Just in those categories, put
two.
4.
domain 2 and 3.
I think that's fine.
Yeah.
To be fair, they're getting acknowledged with 8 as well on that. And so if you're getting marked distinguished in 2 or 3, as well as getting 8, is that double
Right, but we
Yeah,
have, we
but-
have some teachers who haven't gotten to the point where they can be 8 but they're still getting distinguished, so.
Right.
But I think that's what he's saying. He's saying that, so like me, I get distinguished in 2, but I also get 8. Is that fair to the?
But it's still gonna help the person that's below you. I mean, scoring just a little bit less than you, but they might score more than somebody else who's not there yet.
I hear that.
So, 10. So then this should go to 14. Okay.
I mean, I don't know if the point values are totally accurate now because we've changed it so many times. I feel when we finalize it, I'll go back.
You may have to figure our math.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know if it's multiplied times 3 or 4.
And then we'll go
Yeah.
find another
I
one.
would just say times 3, I mean,
Okay.
or 10, that's easier.
Well, we're up to 14, because
Yeah.
3 is the max in 2 categories, and 4 is
Yeah.
the max in 2 categories.
So I can go and finalize all that once we have
And
that
please make sure
decided.
these are aligned. I don't know why I can't have it. Criteria, we have hard to fill positions as determined by the board and Idaho State Department.
Of education.
Do they actually determine?
Well, Becca got.
I don't know if that came
No.
from their language, so,
Yeah, I don't know.
so.
I mean, actually,
You don't- you can
it's
delete that.
through our negotiated agreement.
I
I don't know. I didn't write that, so I think it's through our negotiated agreement.
Okay, so if we just have hard to fill positions,
Yeah, you can go with that.
identify, you have to say what position it is, I guess, and they get 2 points. Advanced professional endorsement, so whether they're on a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. 2 levels, 2 points per level, 2 for level, 4 for level 2, etc. So each level
Each level
is
would be 2
worth-
points for a
okay.
possibility
Yeah,
of
so
10
like-
points.
2
You're
points.
at 5, then you're at 10.
Just 2 points
One.
per level is always.
Yeah,
4
we
for
just write
level
2
2,
points per
etc.
level.
I don't know.
The rest of it's like 4 for level 2.
Why do
Yeah.
we have national?
That's it.
That's too much.
I didn't put that on there.
There's only like 2 people. I don't even think we have anybody right now.
Again, but that came from their old one, so if you want to
Yeah.
get rid of it, get rid of it.
Yeah. I
This
would
is
say
literally,
it's
all of
degree.
this came directly from their old document,
Just the
so
old
obviously,
form that
that was
was
the
in
old polling
policy.
form.
Here you go,
I
Lynn.
would definitely get rid of
Get
that.
rid of what?
It's not necessary. The national board certification.
Okay.
Here you go, Lynn.
So-
2 points for doctorate. You earned that puppy. And have a job.
So some of us need to.
I love that.
Additional endorsements, so 2 points per endorsement with a max of 4 points, so we're only giving credit for 2 endorsements.
Because like we
So-
said, we could have a teacher at the high school with 8 endorsements, I would put them at 16 points. I
So-
mean, you can do whatever you want. I mean,
Coeur d'Alene
okay.
did 4.
Yeah,
They
so
did
that's why I think
4
that's why I did the max at
endorsements.
4. So 4 endorsements.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do we want to either, in my opinion, you either lower it to 1 point and then take them all, or go up to, I guess, 8 points, so that it could be an
Either way.
accumulation of 4. What do you guys want?
Go to 8.
Okay.
Go to 8.
There we go. Documented letter of reprimand or informal/formal improvement plans in the last 3 years. Yes, 0, no, you get 2 points. Fair enough.
We have to redo the math.
We talked about we don't love that wording and we wanted to be more proactive, but it was
Well, what did Coeur d'Alene, I mean, I
they
think,
listed all individually and we just put it all together of like, if you've had any of that, then there's points, so we simplified it. So, and if, by the way, Jason, I have like 6 endorsements, so.
Yeah, I just about died when I saw your certificate the other day. I'm like, yeah.
oh man, I only have 4.
So, placement on an informal
Social
or
studies is
formal
1.
improvement plan in the last 3 years.
Yeah, but I feel like social sciences should be multiple, because I can teach.
It's 1.
No.
Is that better wording?
1 endorsement.
Yeah.
Placement, or placed instead of placed?
Do you feel like we need to say anything about if there's been a letter of reprimand? What's hard for that for me is it's like, I feel like there could have been and then it's never happened again, so.
Yeah.
So I don't love the verbal written warning because that doesn't necessarily go into a personnel
Yeah, I
file.
don't like
That's
that
usually
either.
email. But if there's a letter of direction, That can be in a personnel file, an improvement plan is in the personnel
I
file.
feel
Well-
like the improvement plan is heightened, and that makes more sense to me.
Okay, but isn't there supposed to be a written, letter of direction before an informal
Yes,
to a formal?
yes.
So when that, okay,
But you may never get to that informal, you just might.
Right, that's why I said, like, you could have a moment where, you know, you're just struggling and there's a letter of reprimand, and then it never goes, like, do we wanna penalize somebody? At the point when there's a formal plan, there should be lots of due process.
so then would it just be placed on a formal improvement plan?
I think you need to keep the informal on there.
What do you all think?
I think in the end, when you're, like, if this really is gonna become a tiebreaker factor, it could matter.
Okay.
Like, in most cases, it's not gonna matter, and that documented piece, they probably have other areas that are gonna score low, but if you're coming down to those not so, like, mediocre, this could be a tiebreaker factor.
I would prefer that to be a tiebreaker factor versus
Put in the
athletics
form.
that are in there, because your athletics are built into your leadership roles that you guys have.
We've been told that we can't use leadership roles as things we get paid for though. So.
People have put coaching, head coaching, they have put those in as their leadership roles.
Okay, so we have then professional contributions. Teacher served in an additional building or district leadership role during 3 of the previous 5 years. Regularly.
Yeah, we don't know what the definition of
We need to
regular
do- Right.
That's why we
Right.
highlighted it, we felt like it needed to be defined.
Volunteers for school activities before or after contract time. I think instead of defining regularly, there should be a duration of volunteer time. So is it like within the last year? And then I would say consistently instead of regularly. Because consistently is more easier to determine than, well, I did it here and then, you know.
Yeah, we
It's just
we
very
were-
subjective.
Initially, it just said volunteer, and we
Right.
just thought it was like, okay, you could be one and done versus the person that volunteers every week. Like, that's a different magnitude of responsibility, and so we wanted it to be reflective of that.
And that word can still be changed consistently.
And again,
Volunteers.
volunteer means not school, not paid positions, because sometimes that also gets convoluted. Because we'll say, well, I can't volunteer because I do this other thing that I get paid to do.
Right.
So, but then that puts a lot of pressure on those people who don't do those things to be consistently volunteering, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So,
Okay, so what are you saying, Brooke?
I'm trying to figure out, because like when I look at Coeur d'Alene's and I see their criteria and then I look at ours, I'm thinking, how am I gonna track all of this? How,
We
Well,
need
you
it to
wouldn't.
not be subjective. Well, she does, she's the one who goes through and she does the ranking.
well, last week when we discussed this particular form, we kind of discussed who was actually filling this out, and so one of the conversations.
For these ones is really gonna be.
It's gonna be mostly at the building level / based off our IPLP. We were told, well, we discussed, we weren't told, we discussed that if this is something that we needed to have, well, that's what was discussed,
Yeah,
so.
we just,
Well, there's no way you can do that without the building principal if we keep this.
There's a
stuff
lot
in
of
there.
this that you can't do
And or-
without.
Right,
the
that's why
building
Coeur d'Alene, I
principal.
think, went to
Right.
what they did, because if you're having the building principals do it, you're not gonna get consistency in the way they're applying this.
But the other statement, well, the other conversation piece was putting this into our IPLPs, like, we would put what we were doing, and then Brooke would have access to that information to say.
Yeah, we
you know.
said if whatever criteria we have on here, it
Yeah.
has to be implemented in the IPLP so that you can look at it, but
Mm-hmm.
do we have to have all this stuff? Could we make it simpler? Because
We can,
this is
yeah.
gonna,
I think so.
But I still don't know how Brooke would have access to, you know, what leadership roles we're in, what we're doing in the building, what we're volunteering for outside of school hours, all of those things. So that needs to be documented somewhere if we're not gonna have
Well,
our building
leadership is on
principals.
the IPLP though.
I mean,
Yeah, I guess it's just it's
but then we're just
important
told we don't
that
have to put it on.
building principals are ranking people correctly then with that. And being real clear with the definition of volunteer.
Well, where it gets problematic would be like at the elementary level, if we were saying we had to RIF 15 elementary teachers, and each one of the principals, there are 6 of them, interpreted things differently.
Which they do. but-
Right, all the time.
Yes.
Then you have one principal perhaps who's very black and white and isn't super lenient, and you have another one who might be very lenient, and then you've got it's just not fair and equitable. The recommendation is that the HR director is the one who does it, and if there's a question, if she can't find the answer to the question, she can reach out to the principal and ask. Rebecca has to have a leadership, I can't find it. Is she been in leadership?
Well,
class
that's
for
what we talked about, is that's how it would be done, but, cause there's no way unless you put it on the IPLP that Brooke can find this information, so she literally
Our
has to
old
call.
IPLP had all of
Yeah,
that stuff.
we listed all of it at the
Yeah, it's
bottom.
all dialed in.
Would the employee get the same contact? I mean, would they be involved in any of that process? Because
At the end, the
we
way
have a
that,
new principal that I guarantee you doesn't know all the leadership positions in his staff, so.
right, but Harrison and Laura.
You think?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yep.
Last time I thought we talked about maybe just doing a spreadsheet where staff could input, here are the leadership roles that I take, here are the times that I
And we
volunteer.
have been all over the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were gonna plug it into the IPLP or put it
I
in a
know, yeah.
spreadsheet.
I mean,
that's
there's
something.
So are we
That
thinking we
might
just
be a
need to take
simple
out
way
that,
for-
because it is kind, I
It was
mean,
like 2 questions.
on the IPLP, the principal has to state
You could
if
just
they
do it.
are in a leadership position.
On the new one, do they?
Yes,
I haven't seen it.
because you still have to meet the APE criteria.
And once you made the ape, you don't, that's what.
But new people still have to make it, but you're right, moving forward, the principal wouldn't have to
So
fill
then the
that.
assumption would be though that if you've made eight, that you've been in
Then you've
leadership,
been
and
in
then it's
the-
an automatic.
Yeah.
So really, the simplest way to do this is either everything on ours is exactly what Brooke would retrieve. If you want it to be as calibrated as possible and as objective as possible, whatever we have on there has to have been on our IPLP.
Yours sound like a cow.
Sorry.
I do want to say though, I know we went on this new state platform for evaluations, and prior to this year, we didn't have a platform. We had everything in Google Docs, and this is where it's going to get super labor intensive if I have to go down this road. Coeur d'Alene has a lot more resources as far as their HR department than I do. They were able to have their IT department pull in the data from the the evaluations and then just plug it in. Where at this point in time, if we do a RIF this year, I'm gonna have to go into each individual Google Doc
Oh, you're gonna have to go, yeah, I was gonna
of
say from last
290 certified
See, and you weren't here
staff.
last week, but I actually defended you. I said, that's just too much work for one person. We
Right.
need to be able to have somebody else putting eyes on stuff too and.
Yeah,
helping with
and
that
I mean,
process.
Eric told me he had his IT department. I think he has like 5 or 6 people in his HR department. They had people in their finance department all coming together to put together, but he had 600 employees to put all this together. So there is the benefit. I am happy we're on the state platform now for evaluations.
It's so
Hopefully we
horrible.
never have to go through this situation.
That platform it's awful. The IPLP is awful. But
So is the IT personnel looking at individual people's scores?
No, they were able just to pull the data and import it in over into their evaluation form. They just pulled the data for them. Where I'm gonna have to go in right now on each and every Google Doc and go down the whole evaluation form for everybody.
But.
So they could pull in the basics, their IT department could pull in the basics, and IT has to stay confidential if they're handling that type of stuff. We have IT that has to handle sensitive information for HR anyways. They have access to the whole platform, so it has to stay confidential. Now, as far as personnel files, they don't have access to that, if that's what you're saying. But, yeah.
Well, I get you saying they're just pulling the data, but there has to be identifiers from, you know, either, I guess maybe what I should ask is everything identified by number or is it by name?
By number.
Okay,
So you have employee numbers
right.
and
Okay.
key codes, yeah.
Okay.
Can we just rank ourselves? I just wanna be all, I don't know.
Just rank
Seriously, like, I mean, I could just score myself and then tell you what my score is.
Well, I think,
I mean, I know people could cheat, but I'm just saying, like, I don't know.
Yeah, that won't work.
So are we just saying we need to get rid of that part then?
Are you guys opposed to looking at the Coeur d'Alene's new form? It's much simpler. Do you feel like it's missing things?
But it's a similar idea that
it's,
in the sense that somebody still has to have record of that, so where's that
Either
record
way,
being kept?
yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's gonna be.
within
on
here, there is, I mean, having listened over the weeks that have come, I know there was one that I missed, but there,
Being 8.
we're not going down that path. The biggest concern that's come out is making sure that we aren't, that we are looking at each individual teacher as a whole package contribution to the district, not just here's your 4 categories and good luck, hope your score's high enough. And so that is why, in defense of everyone sitting here, this might seem convoluted, but I don't think it really is. I think it's trying to honor the fact that people in our district contribute in various ways that might not be identified on an IPLP. So we want to make sure that they're being valued and that that value equates to a score if we come down to where these numbers matter. So maybe, Brooke, if you are willing to look at everything that has been compiled on here and figure out how maybe we can incorporate some of the non-IPLP rankings or points or whatnot, because I hear what you're saying. You shouldn't have to, you know, go through each employee file and do a form on each employee. That's overly cumbersome. If IT can pull the IPLP components, if principals within buildings are on board with, okay, now it's my turn to go through this, if there's 2 meshing whatnots, I mean, maybe it's just a form that you send out and say, I need to know what your personnel is contributing to by volunteering or whatnots. I mean, there's going to have to be collaboration.
Right, of course.
So, and I do think we need to honor the fact that time and effort was put into modifying what was received to make it for our district.
Right.
So,
I do have one suggestion.
yeah.
The Tanomi main tech person, I mean, we're on a first name basis now because I reach out to him so much on that platform. I could ask him to break that all down, all of that kind of subjective, and make a form that we put into the Tanomi platform, and then teachers have to fill it out, like, and then they can do the data analytics, and it's a report. I could ask, and then you just have a report because that's what they do. That's what they'll do for the IPLP and the student achievement piece. I mean, I don't know for sure if they will, but I could ask, because then it would be teachers, like, and we could make it like, have you, and then they're just, here's the, I would probably say then it's just a 1-point value, we call it good and super simple, but we could see if it's all, and then you're just retrieving the data from the platform. What do you guys
And then
think
we can
about
build
that?
a historical data of
What
that
do you think
employee.
about that?
I mean, that's,
Is it worth
because we had already
asking?
talked about putting it into the IPLP, we just weren't sure where it would get
Okay.
put in, so
So
like,
I'm gonna add.
yeah, if you took the section 3 professional contributions and put that in there,
Okay.
then that's kind of black and white, because either you did or you didn't do those things.
Well, and then you guys would just have an additional form you'd have to fill out.
Well, but I
I mean,
also
it
feel
could
like
be
the
simple.
principals will be checking that off. I mean, they need to check it off and
Right.
us accountable. So if I'm like, yeah, I volunteer every week,
Right,
but I really
right,
don't,
right,
like the
right,
principal
yeah.
should be able to say,
Right.
wait, what? No, you don't. Coaching doesn't count because you get paid for that, like
Okay.
that kind of stuff.
I'll reach out to him, tomorrow and see if cause that could be a solution to what you were saying, like, we spend a lot of time and that's important, so if there's a way to not make it cumbersome,
Right.
maybe we can use the platform in our benefit.
Well, I mean, I really like that idea because like I said, you can build a history with it.
But this is not going to help you this year. That's
It's,
the only
no, this
problem.
year, if we go
If we
through
riff,
this
it's
year,
gonna be-
But not necessarily, I mean, some of the stuff he's done
Yeah,
it
nightmare.
immediately, so.
Right, but
We
their
don't have to riff
evaluations
this
Yeah, but
will
our-
be
We're
done
fine.
in time because
It goes on last year's
Megan's timeline
evaluations.
for us
You're
is
right.
that we have to start doing
What?
this process
For this
now.
school year?
For this school year, we're fine.
Oh, you mean
Yeah.
this current one, we're talking about.
No, I'm talking
I
about-
said this year.
25 and 26.
No, I
But
meant
they're-
like if they have to riff for next year,
They're using
they're
last
using
year's.
last year's evaluations.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going on.
Hold on.
Okay,
I will see what they say, and then I will report back.
okay.
I,
So,
really like because we talk on a regular basis.
all right, so are you all comfortable
Yeah,
with,
no, I think that's great.
so,
So
go
this
ahead.
guys-
portion will be into.
Administrators, do you
a-
have issues?
Do you
with-
see naysayers?
No, I said
Oh,
administrators, not
administrators.
naysayers. You people okay?
I do.
Are you
Those of you
okay
that
with
knows
that?
me.
Is that- I mean, would you be okay with the teachers filling it out and
I think so.
then meeting
yeah.
with you and?
That's what I was thinking with that spreadsheet is
Yeah.
just, then the principal, like you're saying, could, or like.
'Cause they meet
saying,
anyway, I mean, I
Could say,
can help you.
every week, maybe not,
Right.
but you know. But I think people would, for the most part, be honest.
I would be interested just taking Timberlake staff, I don't know how time consuming it would be, but to put Timberlake staff in that Coeur d'Alene model. And see, A, how long it would take to put them in there, and then two, how that would pan out.
Yeah.
Because I understand the process, but I think we are making, and I know we're talking about livelihoods. I'm not devaluing that at all, but I think we are making this process awfully difficult and getting it down to where we're breaking down DNA.
But I think part of the reason why we're doing that on the front end is so that we can be certain on the back end, and if somebody does have, when we get to that due process, we've covered all of our bases.
No, sure, I understand that, and I'm all for that, right? But I think when it comes down to it, what,
Simple is better.
yes.
Yeah, it's not going to be that.
Cause I bet you I could just, well, I'm not, if like Coeur d'Alene ranked their teachers and we all ranked, even staff ranked a word, and then we did that, I bet you would come out pretty much how we all rank our staffs, whether you're a teacher or an admin, without doing the, but again, to be fair to the individual, that could quite possibly riff, I get it, but due process and.
Okay, so are we good flipping back over to the procedures and, seeing what they say?
Well, did we, just real quick though, did we
Yeah.
decide that we were moving that documented letter to the tiebreaker component of things, or were we gonna leave it there? What's that?
Well,
Were we gonna leave that there?
It makes sense there. I mean, it's
Okay,
still.
that's fine, that's,
yeah.
it's just that Brooke said something about moving it to tiebreakers, yeah.
Well, on the Coeur d'Alene form, it is, down here under professional standards.
Yeah.
Documented verbal coaching, which, Brooke said she didn't like, so, which is, you know, I agree. I think, it can be something else other than that, if we even need that, I don't know. I can't
In our
monitor it,
form
so I
currently,
can't do anything with
that
this,
section
so.
is
Yeah, I can't- we
being used
actually
as a
don't have-
We have to
tiebreaker.
make a
No.
copy of
Oh,
it.
okay.
Yeah, we.
No.
I was just gonna argue that I think that's should be in the big section, the body of being evaluated.
I think
Okay.
if our form is looking too cumbersome, you could
Let's-
definitely format it more like they have it
Yeah,
in,
Yeah, I think.
Well, if we put it into Naomi, then he can
Spread-
format it and make.
or there you
yeah.
go. Yeah.
And I think what they've done is kind of consolidate some, like we have, I was looking at, as Michelle was going through ours, we have, they're very specific, like, volunteers for leadership positions in the building, volunteers for
Yeah.
leadership positions in the district, volunteers, instead of just
volunteers. Well, you've got some people who do all three, you've got some people who only do one, so I mean, I don't know. Again, if you wanna condense it and just put it in one category.
We
Because
could
they don't
debate
even
this
have
forever.
that in there.
Let's
Yeah.
just make, I mean, that could just be simple. You volunteer, yes, you don't, you don't. I don't know.
Let's just leave it the way it is right now
Yeah.
and see if we have a streamlined way of doing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
Perfect.
then we might feel fine.
Okay. Procedures. Did we? Oh, yeah, we did. Okay, so we took that bottom line out. Procedures. Upon its declaration of a financial emergency, the board shall reopen the salary and benefits. Did I already read all this?
You did, I think we got down to kind of.
No, we got to the the bulleted points. Right there, we stopped right there.
Okay. The following, yeah, because that's right, I took out the following. Okay, each criterion shall be considered in terms of the total context when selecting those employees who are to be considered for reduction. Following will be considered evaluations, educational certification and credentials, student and or school activities, extracurricular activities, extra duties, professional contributions, longevity, and tiebreaker considerations.
Remember
Me
we-
personally, oh, go ahead.
We did say that that's all linked to the categories in that form, so if we change any of those, we'll have to change that there.
Mhm.
Well, I think if we, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
if that is truly what's on the form, and I think it should be headlined that way so that everything
It's right
equals.
here.
Um,
So up above where it says the following criterion,
Yeah.
we actually, those are all, that's several individual criteria and making criteria.
okay.
Yeah, so we just need to make sure we come back, wrap that back around.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so all certificated employee RIF considerations will be jointly reviewed by the district leadership team and the LEA leadership team prior to completing policy, where did it go? All right, 5740F, or 5740. Did I write that right? 5740F. Period. The HR director and building administrators will determine the points received on policy 5740F for the certificated employees considered for a RIF. Considerations start with the lowest points allocated for category 2, category 3, and all renewable certificated employees who scored overall basic or have a basic classification in domain 2 and or domain 3 on the prior and or current year's individualized professional learning plan, IPLP. And then we removed a whole bunch. If additional reductions are necessary, then all remaining certificated employees will be identified and scored.
So you're gonna take out your basics right away, is what
Mhm.
I'm hearing.
Mhm.
So even if like we had an employee that did have a basic, but it was for something like organizational, but they're amazing in everything else. So we're still just gonna.
But that's why
That's
we
why it says
said,
domain
look,
2
it's
and 3.
overall
Oh,
basic
okay.
in it, or in domain 2 or 3.
Okay, alright.
The two most important domains.
That was the last 2 weeks' discussion.
Gotcha.
Okay. Then all remaining certificated employees will be identified and scored. RIF considerations will start with the lowest score.
On number 13, it actually accidentally says 5470 instead of 5740.
Thank you. The HR director will provide a RIF notice and policy 5740F to the certificated employee affected by the RIF along with a copy of the RIF policy and procedures. We could just, say 5470 and 5470P. If the certificated employee selected for a RIF believes there is an error made on their 5740F,
Could just say on their form.
scoring form, the certificated employee shall notify the HR director of his or her concern in writing by the close of the school day on the third school day after the RIF notice has been delivered to the certificated employee. The written notice shall specifically identify what elements of the certificated employee profile, which we don't know that we're using that, are believed to be erroneous, and explain specifically why the elements are believed to be in error.
Can I just throw out a hypothetical situation? So we have a levy we're rerunning in May, on May 20th. Megan's direction to us is that we should go through this process and rank everybody so we're prepared. But if we don't start having, delivering those things, I mean, we're at the end of the year, so I'm looking at the school day.
We talked about that last week about could we potentially start doing some things on the front end, but we don't know what the legalities of that would look like.
We can rank people, and we just don't talk about who
We
they
don't,
would be.
we don't send letters out, we don't do anything, but then it would be like the day after if the levy should fail.
I'm just
Then
Everybody's
those are ready,
getting like,
those are ready to go. Those
I'm just
letters are
wondering
out.
if there's any possibility of
What color
of
envelope
it
will they be
moving
delivered
out
in
farther
there?
than
Brooke?
it's
What should
not
we be
a
waiting
school day.
Will they be pink?
that we're,
Oh my gosh, I can't even stomach that idea.
depending on when our last day of school is for the year.
But that is what Coeur d'Alene did. They ranked all of their people ahead of the election, and they had the letters and everything go
Oh my
because
gosh.
there's such a narrow
Yeah,
timeline
no doubt.
after
But
that.
no, and I understand that. How do we even prior to that let people know? I mean, I think are we just gonna wait until after the levy for people to then scramble to try to figure out what they're doing?
Well, if you went back to Amy White's letter, her email is to encourage people to start looking now.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, but obviously, but who are those people?
I would say
That's
anybody
what I'm
that's.
saying.
I'd say in the first 5 years.
How do we identify?
But we have to know how many
You can't identify until
you can.
you reach that bar, and the bar is who passes or doesn't.
And we're just talking about those that are potential to be ripped. If Jason's, hypotheticals, Jason's coaching baseball and we don't pass our levy, and we're saying, okay, we're gonna cut baseball, there's not gonna be he's gonna find another job so he can coach baseball and teach, and he quite possibly wouldn't be ripped, he's not even remotely close to being ripped, and now we're losing employees
Yeah.
like
Oh, yeah.
that we would need to know,
So
because
you would
that's.
never enact a RIF if you went that way, because between your category ones and your resignations and retirements, you might reach that number.
Yeah,
Because people are concerned.
I guess though there still should be a number of, we have this many teachers, if the levy doesn't pass, we're gonna need to cut down to this many teachers, so if you're 10 years or less, you might wanna
Well, and
start
so
looking.
I guess then maybe what would help
I
then
don't
is,
know.
can we come up with a number? Because,
Right.
if you're talking 10 teachers per million, right? Is that pretty much accurate? 10 teachers per million, but then, but then now we gotta figure out, what about classified staff? So I think we need to really get in the weeds as far as how many classified are we gonna be losing, so then they can start preparing, and then how many teachers are we gonna be losing if that fails? We don't have to say who's gonna be, we just say, we're gonna lose approximately,
Well, according to levy,
50
25.
teachers, or whatever the number is, and so now people are saying, holy smokes, I
Well,
see
it's more
this.
than that.
I see
well, it's
this.
25 on top of your 25 Cat 1s and retirees, correct?
But do you see what I'm saying? And then that way people will have a better idea, because if they're on that, if they're
It's
saying,
about
oh wow,
96
there's,
employees.
huh?
96
96
employees.
employees. Because I counted through, on Lisa's recommendation, what she had in all of her various categories, trying to understand. So you're trying to save this, but you're reducing this. And I'm not saying it's 100% accurate, because I'm going off of
Yeah.
my memory.
So we're talking about 100 employees.
Roughly.
And how many of those are classified compared to certified?
I can't tell you that one.
See,
When
so that's-
Jessica and I played around with it, it was close to 50 certified, because you have the
Yeah.
25 category ones and resignations and retirements, and then
Right.
when you look at ALP, specialists, principals, assistants, all of that, cause you'd have to cut all of that to get to that dollar amount.
Yeah.
And then when you look at salary-based apportionment, it was close to 50. I mean, don't quote me on that, it was like, that was a month
Right.
ago, but it was something like
Yeah,
that.
well, whatever the number is, so,
Michelle's
yeah,
accurate.
I would just encourage you guys as a board and administration to give that number so that people can then say, I mean, because it's a lot different if it's 10 teachers, because then you have a bunch of, you know what I'm saying? If it's 50 teachers, now that we need.
That's building.
That's a
two
building.
That could be two
But
buildings.
it-
But I guess I would caution, so think about this, it's 25 of those.
Are already gone.
Are already gone because it's resignation, retirements, and category 1,
Yeah.
so they're part of the total dollar amount,
Right.
but they're already gone.
But,
And
yeah.
to Josh's point, if people then were like, okay, we're cutting baseball, then, you could potentially see more, like, I think you'd see that number go up a little bit more, but,
Yeah.
so Jessica and I were guesstimating that likely you'd be looking at riffing close to 20 people,
Yeah.
20 certified, and then however many classified. And classified is hard because it depends on which positions you are because of the dollar amount.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, then Cat 1s could be like we could get maybe some of those Cat 1s back if you told people we could lose 50 teachers if we don't pass the levy, like, then at
Yeah.
least maybe we might still have some
Yeah.
options, I don't know.
But yeah, I just think we need to do everything in our
Yeah.
power to at least put it out there as far as, 25 teachers are gonna be gone, and then that way people can start doing the math and maybe understanding, hey.
But I think if you tell the story, you have to say 50 because, yes, we'd only riff the 25, but as far as the general public, the impact would be 50 teachers.
I just said 50 and you
You said
argued with me
25.
and said, no, before that I said
said
50 and
riff.
you said, yeah, but it would
Your
only be
logic
20.
doesn't make sense.
How does that not make sense? Didn't I say it'd be 50 and you're like, well, Jason, we have 25
Well, I
Cat
said
1s that are
specific to riffing, it would be 25, but to the general public,
Come on, math teacher.
I
Keep up.
know, I'm talking to teachers that
I understand.
our Cat 1 people already know that they're gonna be gone. I'm saying how many other people, we owe it to those
25.
other people
Agreed.
to understand what that number is so that they know, hey, we're gonna be cutting more than just Cat 1s.
I just think we keep it simple and say 50 total. 50. 25 Cat 1s and 25 regular stuff.
That's what I say.
Yeah.
That's what I say.
Okay.
And then do you guys, do we have any kind of a process for classified staff? As far as experience, I mean, we're gonna be looking at experience, or are we looking at just,
So they're gonna have to look at the
Position.
whole, I've had this question, they'll have to look at the whole big picture based off of prior evaluations, disciplinary
so,
action.
and it just got me thinking because the
performance.
directive last night was to tell both high schools that they needed to riff a person, or to let someone go, right?
Not necessarily.
Wasn't that a position? Did
Well,
they?
so what Randy was saying was if they have a retiree that they don't need to fill,
Oh,
that they can use that salary in lieu of, that could be that 85,000 that they're looking at. It doesn't have to be that they're cutting somebody else. There are some people that are leaving.
I took it as they were basically told that they had a position they had to cut.
So is that above
I
who
was gonna say, so it's not double dipping.
we're already,
When I didn't
Yeah,
know,
it would
it-
have to be above.
and I thought it was classified. I
so we're
didn't
getting
know
rid
was
of
it certified
another
or-
person?
No.
No, what Randy was trying to do was give the principal some latitude, so
Yeah.
if somebody resigns, say they get a job elsewhere. And because of enrollment, we don't need to replace that. That can be that $85,000 cut, and then you could keep
Our
all your
career
counselors, or all of those, whatever that is. So she was just trying to give a little bit of ability.
So basically, they just need to try to find $85,000 that they can cut out of their budget.
Yeah.
Whether it's a teacher, classified member, or a retired. whatever.
Above and beyond who
What
has
they're
already.
What they've
on.
already done, yeah.
Now, okay, so then if it does go to, okay, so Jimmy's like, well, it's gotta be a classified member. I guess that's my question is, is there a ranking system? Do you guys have a ranking system for them?
I would say,
Or is it
again,
just subjectivity
Because
based on
we
the
don't,
principal?
I mean, we could put one together, but by law, they are not subject to the RIF process.
No, they're
because
not, no.
certificated,
but
so-
I would hope that a principal, when they're deciding, or a director in their department is deciding,
Yeah.
is they are gonna base it on overall performance of an
Right.
individual. They can take in some of the seniority as a factor, and attendance. If they're looking, I'm sure they're gonna look at all of that stuff before considering.
I would hope so.
But
I
they
mean,
are
that's-
at will.
Yeah,
I just-
I would hope so.
I guess I would just hope that we would, I mean, obviously I have to trust that our principals across the district are going to protect, but it's just too bad that there's not a kind of set guideline there.
Well, and that's, yeah, I'm just saying, I'm trying to look at just the big picture, not that any of our principals would do
Right.
it, but when, I mean, you could get into a situation where it's, principal doesn't like someone or whatever, and now that person's just gone.
Well, we
Is
could
that-
put,
no?
we can put,
Not, no, so that's like if you were retiring, we're still talking about that $85,000?
No, I'm
No,
talking
it's
a
just now we're just
classified
talking
staff.
about
Oh, I'm
classified.
not talking, sir, I'm not gonna classify, I just
There's-
wanna try and be as fair as
we-
possible.
we can put a protocol together that we would give to the principals and the directors so that they're all doing it the same way, like.
Or at least have maybe another set of eyes
Yep.
on that, or and I'm sure you probably do
points
that
for your-
anyway.
Points for your evaluation.
Yeah.
Points for your attendance.
Okay.
If there's been any kind of coaching conversations, disciplinary, whatever.
Sorry to take up the time, I just.
We can, yeah,
It's
that,
just so close. We're just-
I do think it's important that we're being fair and consistent across the district.
Thank you.
Alright, so if, so we went through here. We stopped here. But we didn't. So if the certificated employee selected for a RIF believes there's an error made on the scoring form, the certificated employee shall notify the HR director of his or her concern in writing by the close of the school day on the third school day. I don't like that. Okay. In writing by the close.
We call it week or work day instead of school day, just
Yes.
because if the levy election is late, like, I mean, it's May 20th, the board, we can't do anything with the RIF until the board declares a financial emergency, and there are steps that have to be gone through. That's gonna take a little bit of time, and we may actually be giving those notifications after school's out, potentially.
But can't they still put us in a state of emergency even with rerunning the levy?
Well,
Because we're still
yeah,
under.
they can,
So,
I mean,
yes, after we submit the budget, you're right, we can do that, and then rescind it if we don't need it.
Basically, you're just saying it's 3 working days,
Right.
3 days past the day.
I think it's the,
Right.
Brooke, do you have to handle it?
obviously not weekend days, so. it's
I hope
whatever.
not.
I'm saying, because if you do, you better have someone. Because I mean, well, you just never know. I mean, it's, you get pretty angry. I wouldn't want to.
should we also say don't deliver this to a teacher at the beginning of a school day? No, because we've had
Yeah.
people get
No, I know.
bad news at the beginning of the day,
And then you have
and then you have to teach the rest of the day. Like, that's ridiculous.
I've been there.
I agree with you.
We've had people that didn't get moved into positions and then they're told at the beginning, it's craziness.
I typically like to save bad news for the end of the day or
Yes.
Friday
Right.
at the end of the day.
So if we see you at the end of the day on a Friday.
Hey, can you add payday to that too? I mean, come on, Brooke. I mean, geez.
Alright, so I reworded some of this because I didn't like the way it sounded. If the certificated employee selected for a RIF believes there is an error made on the scoring form, the certificated employee shall notify the HR director of his or her concern in writing by the close of the third work day after the RIF notice has been received. The certificated employee shall identify what elements are believed to be erroneous and explain why the elements are believed to be in error. Alright. Any problems with what I changed? Okay.
Well, as Lisa brought up, what if But just timing wise, this happens after school.
She changed it, so it doesn't say
It's
school
the-
day anymore.
It just says
Third
work-
work day.
yeah, it's a
So
third-
say you
third
get it on a
work day.
Friday,
Okay,
you
so
would
we're
have
assuming
the
it's next
weekend
day.
and then 2 more work
Okay.
days. If the HR director receives notice of possible errors, each timely received written notice. Each
Does
written
that have to be on paper or can that be an email?
is in writing, so I would
Just
assume an
email would
email
be
is
fine.
sufficient.
And the email actually is preferred because it has a date stamp, time stamp, so that you can verify that you sent it or returned it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Each written notice shall be individually reviewed. For possible reconsideration or evaluation of the information used to create the certificated employee score. This may include, okay, I didn't like this sentence, but this may include a member of the district's or school's administration communicating directly with the certificated employee to obtain more information or documentation relating to the alleged error.
Seems like that's kind of assumed.
Seems pretty obvious.
Right? But
Okay.
if you have to rescore it and you are lacking information, you probably need to get the
So,
information.
each written notice shall be reviewed for possible reconsideration or evaluation of the information used to, okay. If the HR director determines that an error was made in completion of the score, okay. If the an error was made in completion of the score, a new came forwarded, no. Comma, a new form will be created and forwarded to the certificated employee in question. If the HR director determines that no error was made in completion of the form, the certificated employee shall be notified of the determination. Well, that's good. How long though? I mean, they have 3 days to get to Brooke. How long does Brooke have to get back to them upon review? 5 days?
Isn't it in Megan's timeline?
I don't know if she put the checking on errors in there, but I would, yeah, we need it to be quick because you can't do anything until you know that everything's accurate, so.
Love that. Whatever may be appropriate.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, no. So,
Can we just does that even have to be in there? Can we just say,
Yeah,
shall review
no.
the dispute and make a
Terrible.
final decision?
Yes.
That makes it sound like it's just kind of willy-nilly.
In whatever way. You
the
just feel
issue
like
of the
I
appeal.
like
by your
this
campfire or
procedure.
something. Sitting in your hot room.
Alright, so, the HR director determined, okay, the certificate shall be notified of the determination, within, Thank you. Okay.
So, is there a time limit at number 15? If the HR director receives the notice, possible errors, it'll be reviewed and within a certain time limit or not?
I think it probably needs to go into 16, because 16 is the same as 17, except that one finds an error and one doesn't, so within, it would be, that statement should be there too.
So are 16 and 17 within 15 though, really?
Okay, what?
Are 16 and 17 more sub to 15? She either finds one or she doesn't.
So you could almost tab those two.
Well, I would tab them rather than
You mean have them as a
delineate.
bullet under?
Yeah, bullet or
15?
tab or something, or A or B or whatever, however you wanna do that.
Oh, I didn't do what I think I did. Nope. Okay, goody. Did I? I don't know. Where's the? Is it here? I think it's here.
Yeah.
But I think these can be shortened. The editor's notice expires. Each written notice shall be reviewed. So the certificated employee shall have 3 work days to file written notice of an appeal of the decision to the superintendent. The superintendent shall review the dispute and make a final decision.
On the second line up there, it says this instead of that.
Here.
Yep.
Superintendent shall review the dispute and make a final decision on the issue of the appeal. The final decision is exempt from any grievance policy now in existence or hereinafter modified or created. Is exempt from any grievance policy. Certificated staff members not affected by the reduction in force policy. Not affected by
I
this.
don't understand what this
I know, we're almost
sentence
there.
means.
So close.
Just reassigned to a different building, so
But
people.
what would the extra duty assignments be?
Would just be if they're doing stuff, they wouldn't do those things anymore and they wouldn't get paid for it.
So for example, if the levy doesn't pass, we don't have crossing guards, and it could be that we assign that as a duty.
Oh.
Available in this district.
Well, it says it'd be the extra duty assignments would be removed.
Removed
So does that mean
appropriately.
I could, like, if we no longer have baseball, then
Yes.
that's gone.
Yeah. Sorry, I misread that.
Keep your teaching position.
Alright, so certificated staff members not affected by a RIF may be reassigned and may have extra duty assignments removed with appropriate reductions of salaries from pre-existing salary levels. In the event that an administrative position becomes available while the RIF is in effect, the board is not obligated to follow the criteria as set forth above, but may select an individual it deems to be the most qualified individual for that position.
So that means you can
I-
just select any, well, it means that,
You're now the principal.
yeah, there's
So-
districts that
Yeah,
have
John
done that.
Brown.
They have hired, they have put people in place that maybe don't even have the credential, but
Where did this information
Does
come from?
that-
This was from Coeur d'Alene, wasn't it?
Does that mean that you could go out and actually like open the position and hire somebody from outside the district? to
No,
fill that?
what it's saying is we
No.
don't have
It
to
means-
follow
No, that's-
any.
It means just, they can just pick somebody and
no,
put them in
I
there.
take it as you'd stay within your own, you're not hiring anybody, you're going to pick some, if there's, if that person is good, you're gonna pick somebody to take his place, and you don't have to follow any of the rules or regulations of doing it.
Except it's speaking specific to this policy, because it says the
Mhm.
criteria set forth above, which would be within this policy, not our district policy. But that seems like, I don't understand why we just pick you, you're it.
That's right.
I mean, I just don't think that's not good business or good leadership. Staff members may be reassigned.
Well, is it put there to protect people that are already in the district, so they would still have a job
I don't know.
versus hiring someone?
I don't know that this is even a relevant statement
I think we
within
should
this
take it out.
policy.
I don't think so.
Certificated employees who are affected by the implementation of a RIF will be promptly notified in writing of the board's decision or actions that need to be taken by the board relating to applicable due process activities, if any.
So here, Michelle, is where we talked about not doing that part that was in yellow. This is the part we were talking about, of